Thank you very much. Good morning, distinguished laureates, education leaders, ministers, and colleagues from around the world. Today we stand, as Andreas mentioned, at a crossroads. Artificial intelligence is reshaping how we teach, how we learn, and how we lead. But the real question, the human question, is what do we teach? And who decides? Can harmony be achieved? Will AI expand opportunity for all learners or deepen divides that already exist? I am so glad to be here today with Dr. Fengchun Miao from UNESCO and also with Baroness Martha Lane Fox from the UK, Chancellor of the Open University. I'd like to start with maybe 3 minutes each for you to mention something that you really wish to start the conversation off with. Over to you first, Dr. Miao.
I think we need to start the discussion with AI competency. I deeply believe that although we are discussing a lot of topics, but the AI competency is the most important issue everybody need to start with. But there's two things probably more important than AI competency. The first one is what before AI competency, because AI is not safe. The things before AI competency is that we need to ensure AI is safe for children, for teaching, and for learning. For this, we need a validation mechanism to ensure that the AI tools coming to the classroom is safe. But so far, according to my survey, to my observation, almost no country has such kind of validation mechanism. China started to do it this year, but not so many other countries are doing it. The second one, behind the AI competency, that is more important than competency, is what we want AI competency to achieve. I think we discussed during the previous speakers and speeches, is that what kind of society we want to build. So in UNESCO, through our AI competency framework for teachers and for students, we started to promote a concept we call AI citizenship, which means what kind of AI citizen we want to build. And for this kind of AI citizen or citizenship or AI society, what kind of AI citizenship we want to build to foster from our students and teachers. I think we need to start from here.
Thank you, Dr. Miao. Martha.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I just want to make 3 brief points. Firstly, I think it's important to remember that 1/3 of the people in the world are not on the internet, and we need to constantly remind ourselves that there is a lot of work to do with just the basic digital infrastructure to make sure everybody has access to some of the things that we're talking about today. Secondly, I'd like to link the themes that I've already heard this morning to work and lifelong learning. You know, I think sometimes it feels as though we talk about education in a vacuum, and I realize that for most people, education has to be a route to meaningful work, and we have to link it to employability and the commercial world beyond just your education setting. And that to me is about embedding really deep relationships with the commercial sector, thinking about what employability will look like in the future. You know, estimates from the World Economic Forum to UNESCO to Goldman Sachs vary, but generally half the world's jobs are going to change in the next few years. Half the world's jobs, that is such a profound shift. And unless we make sure that education reflects that using the tools of the modern age, I think we're going to be doing everybody a disservice. And the final point is just something that I'd like to reinforce. I heard Andreas on the panel before talking about the scale of investment into education versus health. You know, I was looking at the numbers. The education technology sector, which again might be a slightly strange way of grouping it, but the numbers are interesting. 20 billion pre-COVID, 2 billion now. That is a dramatic decline in the investment by the world that I often operate in, the venture capital world and the more technology-focused commercial world. And we need to keep championing innovation and investment and link it up into the sector, because the change that everybody here wants is not going to come just from governments. It's going to come from that interrelationship to the commercial world. So the digital divide, the access to lifelong learning, and the links into the commercial world are the things I'd like to put on the table.
Thank you. And with that on the table, we're going to have a 3 minutes, it's a special section, for everyone in the audience to be included in this dialogue. So what I want you to do is I'm going to invite you to discuss amongst yourself. You've got 3 minutes. the question that is on the screen right now. All right, we need to be inclusive in this discussion and in this dialogue. The question is, at this turning point in education, what is the single most important shift needed for AI to expand learning opportunity in your context? We've got 3 minutes. Let's start.
Exam question.
We are not just putting the onus on the two on the stage. Special segment that they asked me.
No, it's good to keep people engaged. How are you going to get?
It's going to be 5-minute Q&A. They are already putting the questions.
Still, I think I still want to highlight and I will share some more data because we had some survey. The problem is that people are talking, if you like ministers on the podium, they talk about the importance of AI companies, but on the ground they not do it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm going to remind them to put their questions in here.
Yes, so far, okay. Yeah, it's a conference, but it's amazing how many and diverse kind of organizations they are gathering today. It's amazing, and after 10 years, it's really something. 10 years ago, it was very young, and I was doubting whether they can really create a kind of momentum. Now it's really.
We've got 1 minute left. We do not need to find solutions right now. You can post your questions to the experts through the application. Remember that you've scanned a QR code. If you have distilled any very critical questions that you'd like to raise, please feel free to do so. All right, last 20 seconds. All right, everyone, if you could join us back at the stage. I might have to do the teacher thing and ask everyone to clap once and clap twice. Clap once. Clap twice. And we're back. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn to a more practical segment now of our session. Right, we talked about the AI competency framework, Dr. Miao. We have practitioners here in the room as well as policymakers. How can we prepare educators proactively for responsible AI adoption?
First of all, I want to once again highlight the importance of political determination, because I have been participating in many conferences like this, more than 100 probably. Every policymakers, ministers on the podium is talking about the importance of AI competency. However, when we conducted the survey from UNESCO, we found that 2 or 3 years ago, for the AI competency framework or programs for teachers, 2 years, 3 years ago, only 7 countries had that. And for the AI, K-12 AI curricula for students, 3 years ago, only 11 countries, plus 4 countries in progress. I'm not in the position to criticize, but I'm in the position to call on policymakers especially the political leaders, to really, exercise your political leadership and the determination to do so. That's the first thing I want to highlight. The second one I want to add to my previous comments is that we really need to reclaim the human agency, the human sovereignty, the education sovereignty in the mindset. We need to really highlight the importance of human agency explicitly in the AI competency framework. That's why in UNESCO, AI competency framework for teachers and for students, the first aspects of this framework for both teachers and students, we highlight the human-centered mindset, starting from human agency, moving towards human accountability, and towards the AI citizenship. I think this is the most important. This is more important because in the framework, we also have the AI ethics and the AI knowledge and the skills and AI for our job. But I think the most important thing is the mindset, and undermining the mindset is the human agency, human accountability, and the AI citizenship.
We talked about human-centered AI here, Martha. Where do we start if we want to ensure AI serves communities, especially women and marginalized groups, rather than reinforcing inequalities?
Yeah, it's a huge question, and certainly from where I sit in Europe and London and looking across kind of transatlantically into Europe more than in Asia, we feel right now as though the world is being predetermined by a very small number of people in a small corner of Silicon Valley. We see governments all over the place doing huge deals with OpenAI and other big tech monoliths, which inherently might not be bad, but does predetermine a set of values and a way of operating that makes me feel personally very uncomfortable. I think we need to start the design of systems for the most vulnerable communities. And if we do that, then we serve everybody better. I'm lucky enough to work with a charity called I Am the Code, which works with girls in refugee camps. And I visited last year Kakuma in Kenya, where the girls are doing extraordinary things. And I really felt so strongly that if you can provide the infrastructure and the skills and the opportunity to the people who probably feel the most outlying in our world, then you can design systems that are going to help and benefit everybody. But that is not necessarily where we find ourselves starting very often, and it's too much led, in my opinion, by a small number of big companies in a small number of the world.
So when we're talking about responsible AI and AI competency, how do we make sure that it protects the learning journey, designing against de-skilling and ensuring students stay engaged in the productive struggle that builds reasoning, right? When we talk about privileged and underprivileged classrooms, oftentimes the underprivileged classrooms have the benefit of the struggle. So over to you, Dr. Miao. How do we make sure that this universal AI competency framework is deployable to all educators?
I think, first of all, we need to understand and define what do we mean by the responsible AI. I think if we are thinking from student perspective, we can define the responsible AI from the following perspective. The first one, I think most often we ignoring from different perspective is the sustainability responsible AI. So far, the methods of the AI design and the AI deployment is not friendly to the environmental sustainability because we are burning huge amount of energy. We have the carbon emission behind the AI design and the production. So first of all, we need to think what's the implication for the sustainability to make AI more sustainability responsible. The second one is the learning responsible AI, or if we can use a more academic word, we need to think of learning sovereignty responsible AI. How AI can be responsible for our student learning sovereignty is threatening that. It's threatening human agency. It's threatening the learning sovereignty. We need to make sure that the AI design is for the learning purpose. It's for the purpose, because so far the AI used in classroom are not designed for learning. They are designed for adult chat. So we need to design specialized AI that are more responsible for learning purpose. This is the second one. The third one is the context responsible AI. The context can be understood from the linguistically responsible, because so far the AI is the Western AI developed based on the Western language, not in Hong Kong's local Cantonese, not in the local language. We need to make AI more linguistically relevant and also culturally relevant to different culture in Africa, in East Asia, and also curriculum responsible. So that's the context responsible. The third one will be more like, I think we need to ensure that it's children responsible. We need to enforce, no choice, no negotiation, to enforce a kind of age restriction for the unsupervised use of chatbot for children under 13 age. Europe already adopted law 3, I think the day before yesterday. All the countries need to consider this. We really need to make AI really, really responsible. And then before we talk about any other things in the classroom.
Can I just agree with all of the things that have been spoken, but add a couple more? Firstly, it feels as though the kind of world of AI regulation, certainly from a European perspective, is in a dark place right now. You know, if I look at the UK, we have the Online Safety Act, which took 8 years to enact. It went through my chamber, the House of Lords, millions of amendments, and now it's a somewhat unwieldy piece of legislation, which, while trying to help with the old world of technology, is certainly not forward-facing into the world of AI. And it's still very important that we don't, in my opinion, give up on regulation, that we still have the ability to make sure that we have some guardrails at a national level and a supranational level. And the incredibly noisy lobby, certainly from Europe perspective, that comes from the technology sector, that, you know, regulation stifles innovation, don't regulate, we're going to stop being able to make sure that we have the new products of the future, I just think is rubbish. That we have never seen that actually. Regulation leads to innovation very often. Regulation allows the parameters to enable more commercial success. So I think that's a very important piece of this. We mustn't give up on regulation. But being pragmatic about where we are now, I also want to make a plea that we need to think very carefully about individual autonomy and organizational autonomy. And by that I mean, as an organization, whether it's at a school level, whether it's at a local level, thinking that it's just vital to put guardrails around the technology you're deploying, to think about transparency, to think about where the data comes from. You know, we haven't talked so much about data yet this morning, but that is all that the AI is, it's data. And unless you have oversight of what that data is, and it's not opaque, but it's looked at, it's clear, then you won't ever really be able to put the right frameworks around ethical and responsible use of AI.
Thank you. Well, talking about political will and also systems that foster responsible AI, His Excellency Minister Nurbeck has sent a video recording of what he wants to share with us today. So if I may, we can roll the tape on Minister Nurbeck's speech.
Good morning, esteemed members of the EDAN Prize community, fellow ministers, researchers, and innovators. I'm Sayasat Nurbek, Minister of Science and Higher Education of Kazakhstan, and it is a privilege to share Kazakhstan's commitment to advancing learning at this turning point in education, a time when we are definitively moving from chalkboards to chatbots. We believe education system is the only platform to instill AI ethics, and we have to start now. Our vision is rooted in transforming Kazakhstan into a regional education hub and securing our future workforce through intensive AI upskilling, or as we call it, the dip skilling. We fought really hard to capture and harness the power of AI. For countries like Kazakhstan, AI, and specifically generative AI, can become that great equalizer to boost productivity, provide new competitive advantage and possibilities. Kazakhstan is recognized as one of the very first nations in the world to make AI a compulsory subject across national curricula. This approach is fully embedded into AI Sana, our national framework for universal AI literacy. AI Sana is a three-stage talent development pipeline. First stage, every student at university and school level in Kazakhstan has to take compulsory certificate courses developed in partnership with leading tech companies like Google, Huawei, NVIDIA, Binance, Meta, OpenAI. In just 8 months of this year, almost 600,000 students already received certificates and trained in developing their own AI agents. Second stage, we select a group of 100,000 students that will move to specialized training, including AI-based programming, machine learning, and crucially, AI entrepreneurship. It is a very applied framework that allows every student and faculty member identify niches where AI can create or add value. The third and last scaling stage, where we will take the select group of startups or project teams through acceleration and incubation phases, and we'll select at least 1,500 startups for funding, and we're setting up dedicated deep tech funds to seed fund these AI startups coming out of this national funnel. The development of this program is reinforced by advanced infrastructure. This year, we've launched 2 national supercomputers with almost 4 exaflops of combined capacity, making this computer cluster the most powerful computing system in Central Asia. And we also created an academic cluster that includes 4 supercomputers at 4 of our national universities. I call this transition to be the hybrid intelligence ecosystem. The necessary shift is to treat AI as a learning partner instead of asking AI to write this for me. The paradigm shift to think through with me. In this context, AI advances opportunity not by replacing human effort, but by simulating a one-to-one, face-to-face expert tutor for every student. Why this is the turning point? If we stop at automation, we risk raising a generation that is dependent on machines for basic synthesis, logical reasoning, and abstract thinking. If we achieve augmentation, we unlocked human potential by allowing students to learn faster and deeper than ever before. That is why we're democratizing access to the world's most powerful tools. That is why in Kazakhstan, we are giving access to the world's most powerful tools. I'm proud to announce that Kazakhstan has just partnered with OpenAI to deploy ChatGPT education across our education system. This makes us the first nation in the region to provide AI literacy at scale. Responsible AI adoption prioritizes data protection, privacy, and the use of technology to maximize human capacity. For teachers and tutors, responsible adoption means using tools like ChatGPT education not to replace instruction, but to automate routine administrative tasks, lesson planning, content development, freeing up their time for meaningful interaction and mentorship. For learners, responsible adoption involves promoting digital literacy and developing a foundational understanding of AI ethics and security. The most critical competencies for educators in the next 2 to 3 years revolve around digital integration and fostering higher meta skills. AI fluency and integration, I would name it as a first. Teachers must be adept at integrating AI tools into curriculum design and instructional workflows. Second would be tailored education delivery. The most critical competency is using AI tools to deliver personalized education tailored to the individual interests, preferences, and critically, the unique learning speed of every student. The facilitation of human-centric skills would be the third. As AI handles routine cognitive tasks, educators must shift to developing skills where human interaction is irreplaceable, such as creativity, emotional intelligence, leadership, and ethical reasoning. Well, global collaborations must focus on establishing mechanisms that ensure broad access to high-quality educational resources and advanced computing infrastructure, particularly in developing regions. As Kazakhstan transforms into a regional education hub, our success in making AI foundational and compulsory at national level policy, only adopted by a few nations, we can serve as an implementation model for other countries in the global South and Central Asia.
We're hearing a lot of political will and a lot of practical hows there. Any response? I can go to Martha first.
It's really interesting to hear about countries at scale. The thing that makes me nervous is that the incredible reach of companies such as OpenAI into these new networks. It's not because I think that people at OpenAI get out of bed to do a bad job in the morning, but their interests and national interests are not aligned. They're doing very different things, and I think we need to be realistic about where that commercial world hits the public sector and how we think about it.
And I just want to dig deeper, and you mentioned we haven't talked about data yet.
Yeah.
What is the pitfalls, the pros and cons of going with big techs to solve big humanity problems?
Well, I mean, clearly we can't fight where technology is building core competencies, the technology stack, to use technical terms. You aren't going to suddenly build a new foundational models. That's not going to happen as a country. But I think we need to be hyper aware of where power sits, where commercial flows are, where the money is flowing, and where those interests are, because OpenAI is very happy that Kazakhstan, a whole country, is going to be deploying its technology at scale, and the OpenAI commercial motivation is different to what Kazakhstan is trying to achieve. And it doesn't mean they can't be aligned, but I think unless we are very realistic about those two things being different and where the data flows and how the models are built, then we might not end up in the place that we hope to.
Dr. Miao?
Yes, I think I'm very pleased to hear some keywords mentioned by the minister. First of all, they are really now already doing the AI competency development, starting with 1,000, even tens of thousands of teachers. And I believe gradually they will develop their AI competence framework, because we already translate our competence framework into Russian and Uzbek. And secondly, I'm very, a little bit surprised to hear that they also launched a kind of a superpower computing center, because this is really the foundation, the infrastructure for the local AI development, but more importantly, for the, we call it local edu-GPT, which means the educational GPT, educational foundation model based on the local language and also based on the local curricula. I think that this is the right direction to go, and they need to train their local AI tools based on their local language, local culture, and local curriculum system. I think I deeply believe that if they are seriously doing it, they will have a very good future very soon, I think.
So I'm hearing that governance and foundational AI change are required, local contextualized models at the foundation layer is required, and Hong Kong, where we are today, is doing a lot of that, investing in Cantonese LLMs as we speak. So very happy to hear that that's a great direction to start off. Martha, just finally, on the global digital divide, right? Here in this room, we are representing global citizens here. What do you think is going to happen when the global digital divide?
I think that we have to be very intentful in closing it. It doesn't just happen. I've tried in just the UK market to encourage our ministers and prime ministers to think about the final 10%. And so often in the work I've done trying to help more people online, I hear the same comment, which is, well, we have 90%. And I try to make the case, yes, but that 10% is costing us, and it's costing us all. And the 90% will never really reach its full potential unless we also close the gap to the 100%. And that's as much true on a global scale, but it doesn't just happen. I think that's what I've learned. People often think, well, technology is becoming so much cheaper, networks are improving, skills are just becoming part of how everybody operates, but that's not true. You have to make sure that we have programs to help people understand what's possible, to make sure that their skills are fit for the modern age, and to make sure fundamentally the access is cheap and accessible and fast. And this is something that I think we must just always remember. It still strikes me as so incredibly important that we have in our minds 1/3 of the world is not on the internet. 1/3. It's a huge number of people, huge potential market.
And who is designing those models and is going to determine what those models' outputs look like as well. So just a reminder for folks in the room to send in your questions to the panel if you have any. Earlier there was a QR code on the screen, so you can feel free to do those. I've collected several already. Before we go into that Q&A section, I want to go to a 2028 lightning round with the two of you. Minister Norbeck, we are fair. He also did a lightning round for 2028. And the question is, if we reconvene in 2028, what is one measurable outcome you want the world to have achieved in AI and education? Dr. Miao first.
I think the first one is that I also respond to your question about the access and the division. The first thing I want to see that the AI divide is really to show some signs that we are not closing it, but we are reducing the AI divide. Because the AI divide, in addition to what Marta said, is really worrying. And I'm becoming from optimistic to less optimistic. Because the AI divide is not a single divide, it's a compound and a piled divide. It's piled from the traditional, even the very physical infrastructure like the reliable electricity, because in Africa we still have 600 million people do not have reliable electricity. And starting from there, and also internet connectivity, and then digital divide, and up to the AI divide. So far, the divide is really hugely, surprisingly widened. One example, according to the World Bank, they had a statistic April of this year. According to their statistic, among the users of the top 60 generative AI applications, you know the traffic, which means where the users are from, 60% are from the higher income country. Only 0.2% from the low income country. 600 times of difference. It's irreversible. The most important thing I want to see by 2028 is that we can turn 600 divide into, if possible, even 100 divide. For example, 50% from the high income country, maybe 0.5% from the low income country. We can see the turning of the trend of AI divide. Otherwise, to me, AI is a divisive infrastructure, because AI is already entered our infrastructure, like water, like electricity, like transport. Every day we are using it. Now, gradually in the developed country like Hong Kong, we are using AI daily. But in Africa, they even do not have electricity. So which means the infrastructure is dividing us. Infrastructure is not dividing us by our daily life. It's dividing, I call it intellectual infrastructure. Because whatever we are doing in school education, we are building a kind of intellectual infrastructure to support the provision of our education, to support the provision of learning opportunity, to support the provision of our development opportunity. If the students in the developing country, in the least developed country, they do not have this infrastructure, they will not have this kind of opportunity. In a way that AI become a divisive infrastructure, we should be very highly alerted about this, and really, again, I want to see the political determination. Otherwise, after 3 years, 2028, tomorrow, nothing will be changed.
Well, I would be happy with that, 2028. I feel like that is a most important ambition. In addition, if I can have one more, I was thinking about this, and I don't think that, to paraphrase both Obama and Martin Luther King, that the arc of AI bends towards justice in education. And I think part of how that shifts is going back to something that Andrea said on the previous panel and the stats about the investment. We need to massively increase the innovation and investment into the education technology space. If I think back to my career in technology, health tech, education tech, these were the great pillars of the future. And in the late 90s, it felt as though the world was going to be significantly different to how it is now. Much more opportunity for more people, more opportunity for different kinds of entrepreneurs to have built different kinds of solutions to our biggest problems. I think it would be very difficult to say that has been the case over the last 20 years, and I hope in the next 2 or 3 years we can dramatically shift the balance of power, and that requires significant changes in investment into the issues that we're talking about today. Not just a tenfold increase, an even bigger increase. 2 billion is absolutely extraordinary to me when you think about the opportunity that comes from the world that we're talking about in this conference. And that's not to commercialize and make things just about commercial gain, but we know that unless the porous nature of policy making to commercial innovation and success is more joined up, then I don't believe the big challenges will be solved. So I'd like to see dramatically different levels of investment, and I'd like to see it coming from dramatically different places. The world of technology and startups is so monosyllabic. Only 2% of businesses are started by women, just as one statistic, and that is never going to mean that we reach the right solutions if we don't change the people that are building the solutions of the future.
Well, that certainly rings true as a female entrepreneur in the AI for education space here. So we're in the last 5 minutes of our session. I'm going to go to the questions that I've collected from the room now. The first question, this is to the entire panel. We've moved from chalkboards to chatbots, but the fundamental architecture of schooling, age-based cohorts, standardized subjects, fixed schedules remain. To truly harness this turning point, do we need AI to simply optimize our current system? Or do we need the courage to use it to redesign the system itself? What would be a first bold step in that redesign that balances innovation with equity? A very long and complex question. Dr. Miao first, if I can.
Yeah, okay.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. I think if I have the right to contribute, I would like to change the title of this session from not the chatbot to the chatbot, but from the chatbot to the chessboard, because education become a kind of a battlefield between the AI supplier, AI commercial provider, and educators. It's a battlefield. It's a battlefield, it's not a chat field. So I think for this purpose, to respond to this question, I don't think AI should change the huge current landscape of education, even we are talking about the transformation, because we need to think of the purpose of our learning, of humanity development. This should not be changed. Because recently I'm thinking of how we should rethink the core rules of schools in the AI era. So I'm thinking, what kind of rules of the school should not be changed? We should uphold them, and what kind of rule we really need to adapt to the AI era. I think for students, for their innate learning, for our language development, it's not something that we can change. AI should not touch so much. And there also, I call them AI-free learning. We should keep it independent of AI. We should preserve them from the use of AI. It's not that every classroom we must use AI. It's absolutely wrong. We need to keep that this classroom is AI-free. Let students play, think, based on their curiosity or their human interaction. And for some of the purpose of the trade-off, we really think that it's useful, AI is useful, has a unique rule we can consider. So the second point for me is that we need to think of the trade-off between when we should not use AI, when we should use AI, and then how we use AI, and then what kind of AI should be used. I think that's the second point, to guide such kind of negotiation and co-design of the classroom for the future. And only after that, the third one is that we need to think what are the disciplinary skills, disciplinary thinking skills, and the interdisciplinary thinking skills, and the competency above all kind of subject we need to develop. And for this purpose, whether AI can play a unique role and co-design with students, with parents, with teachers on a new kind of the forms and a new kind of pedagogy that we should use to really harness the potential of AI, not only in enhancing the existing pedagogy, but probably to explore the edge through which we may transform or explore the future pedagogy. Nobody knows whether AI can really, really transform pedagogy. If yes, why yes, we need to discuss. If not, why not? We also need to have a kind of negotiation. I think everything to me is more a kind of explorative. It's not so that we can pre-assume that AI can do this, AI can do that. At this turning point, I don't believe we can always say AI can do this, AI can do that. 25 years ago, we said ICT can do this, digital technology can do this. Internet will transform education. Internet will transform teachers' role. After 25 years, how many countries really transform teachers' role through digital device, digitalization, we call it? We need to take the lesson from the history. I'm a little bit old, so I can learn from the 25 or 30 years of my experience of working here. We need to be realistic and still stick to the purpose of our humanity development. So I want to stop here.
Thank you. And Martha, please.
I'm just going to end on something I heard a very smart AI researcher and philosopher called Stuart Russell say a while ago, and he said, we just need to double down on being human. And that struck me very deeply, and there's a book in the US that's, I think, the #1 in the New York Times bestseller by a professor called Scott Galloway, and it's about young boys particularly. But it's more than that. It's actually about how children interact with the world around them, and it's a very startling fact that I was reading in it is that 1 in 7 young men, this is in the US, say they only have one friend. And this is something that has impact the whole way through the chain of their life, clearly. And if education can do anything, it must help us double down on being human and interact with the real world. So we must never make it AI-led. We must always start with what it is to be human.
Thank you so much, and that's all the time that we have. I think we are very clear that the future of education is not going to be written by algorithms. So that's good to hear. It is going to be written by all of us in this room, and let's co-design that together with the right folks and the representative folks of humanity. Thank you.